Every person has a story, and somebody is waiting on that story to be told. Hi, I'm Pastor Rex Johnson with Rex Johnson Ministries, rjm.life. Glad to be able to bring this episode to you with Bruce VanNatta and his wife, Lorie. Man, this story that you're about to listen to is just a story that's out of this world. Glad you're joining. Enjoy. Bruce, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you, Miss Lorie. And Bruce, I want us to talk about your story. Really has got a lot of different. It's got a lot of different chapters in it, and the real big chapter is when you had your accident. Yeah. But let's go back, because I know you was born as a perfect child. And no, none of us were, but let's go back before the accident and talk a little bit about where you were in your life.
Well, I came from a family where there was, my dad drank a lot, and there was drugs in the house, and we, my mom and dad fought a lot, so there was, verbal abuse and physical abuse and all kinds of stuff going on in our house. And so I grew up with some hurts and pains. I was repeatedly molested as a child by some babysitters. And so growing up with heartache and just different hurts, I began to use drugs at a young age and just use that to medicate the pain. And so I was involved with drugs and then at a certain point alcohol and pornography and all kinds of stuff throughout the years. And just continued to make a lot of bad choices and bad decisions as I was growing up and getting older. And my wife got married to Lorie, and we were struggling and having different problems, but she started working at a church, and God was there the whole time, and He was calling out to us the whole time, and did different things to show that He loved us and that He was calling us to Himself. But it took a lot of years for me to receive that and let Him come in and begin to minister to my heart and change things. And we had some missionaries that came through in my mid-30s after we had married over 10 years. Some missionaries came through our hometown area, our home church, spoke at our church. Our pastor connected us with them, and we ended up giving them a van and some stuff for the project they were doing. And they came and prayed for us at our house. And when they prayed, God set me free from drug addiction and, a whole bunch of stuff. And so it was really a life-changing event with them. And that was a year before the accident. So there was a year of sobriety, complete sobriety before the accident. And then it was in November of 2006 when the accident happened. So I had a year of we were leading Bible studies and doing things.
Talk about how did you become a Christian? What was it that happened?
I really feel that I was a Christian for a long time, but I still was struggling with alcohol addiction and drug addiction. Because I would have, feel guilty, pray and ask God to forgive me, fall back in. It was just in that cycle for many years.
Did Lorie, did you have any impact on him coming to know Christ?
No, it was the opposite. He brought me to Jesus.
He brought you to Jesus.
Yep.
Good deal. So let's move into where the accident happened now. You was a mechanic.
Yeah. I had a service truck with a bunch of tools on it, and I did on-site diesel repair around the state of Wisconsin. I just travel around and fix stuff where it was broken. So I could be working, at a factory or a paper mill, or if they had a diesel engine there in some piece of equipment or piece of construction equipment or over-the-road truck or tractor or farm equipment, whatever. I just worked wherever the diesel engines were. I went on site and did them.
Yeah. So this day, the day of the accident, just a normal day.
Just a normal day.
Another day of turning wrenches.
Yep.
Left home that day.
Yeah.
Looking to go back home that evening, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think you have 4 children.
Yeah. We had 4 children already at that point.
What time of the day did this accident happen?
It happened just a little bit after 6. The last time I looked at the clock was 6:10, and I believe the truck fell on me about 6:15.
What happened? How did this accident happen?
Well, as you said, just a normal day. I was working on a logging truck, finishing up a 3-day repair at a place that had logging equipment. It was about an hour south of our home. I had left that morning about 6 a.m. We had, drove over there, got there at 7, whatever. We'd worked on it all day. Got to the end of the repair. In order to test the repair, I was calling because this Caterpillar diesel engine in a big Peterbilt was leaking coolant. And I was called in for a coolant repair. Well, it turned out to be a big job because it was the cylinder head and head gaskets. So we had to take the engine all apart. And they had a mechanic there that worked on site, their own mechanic. And I worked with him for the 3 days. And when we got to the end of the repair, in order to test it to make sure that it was fixed, I had him start up the engine to make sure it was no longer leaking. And so he's, jumped up in and he's running it. I'm wiping my tools off, putting them back in my truck. And I remember looking up at the clock, and it was 6:10. And I was just minutes from walking out the door. And he came over and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, before you go, would you look at one more thing?" He said, "I've got a dirty spot in the engine." He said, "I know it's seeping oil from somewhere." He said, "I wipe it off, but it comes back after a period of time." He said, "So could you diagnose it, figure out where it's coming from, come back at a later time, or maybe it'll be something simple." He said, "You can tell me what to do," something like that. So I said, "Where is that dirty spot?" He said, "In the front of the engine towards the bottom." If you were to stand in the front of the truck and look underneath from the view of the front bumper, there's that space between the bottom of the bumper and the ground. If you were to look underneath that truck from the front towards the back, what you'd see is the lowest thing to the ground is the front axle.
Yeah.
And that front axle has only got, depending on the truck, just maybe this much space between the bottom of that axle and the ground. And that axle has, with the truck empty, 5 to 6 tons of weight, so 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight on the two front tires. And the guy I was working with had jacked up that axle. It's shaped like an I-beam, about this wide front to back, about that tall. And it's goes from the left to the right all the way, from one side of the truck to the other. They're dropped axles, and all it means is out of the middle of the wheels where the axle connects, it drops down, goes from left to the right. And he had jacked up the passenger side of that axle. And he unfortunately not used any safety equipment, no jack stands or nothing. So that weight of that truck has been on that jack for 3 days. Engine's been running 15-20 minutes. He jacked it up over there, and just enough space to go underneath. So when he asked me to look at the oil leak, I got on a creeper, a little tool that mechanics use. I laid on it. I went underneath their feet first, and where I stopped, that axle ended up right between basically my bottom of my ribs and my pelvic bone, and just maybe an inch or two above me, just an inch or two of space between the bottom of that axle and my belly, soft part of my belly. And I looked up at the engine and I said to him, "Get up, go ahead and shut the engine off. I don't need to run anymore to look for this." So he got up inside to shut the engine off. When he did, it kind of, the truck kind of shifted. We'd been in and out of the truck many times. But when it did that time, I saw movement in the peripheral vision of my left eye. And I turned just in time to see that jack that's supposed to be holding that axle up wiggle and move, and it shot out, and that axle came and fell through the middle of my body. Basically like a blunt guillotine, and crushed my body in half. And on impact, when it fell through the middle of my body and crushed my belly and crushed me flat and flattened the creeper out, blood shot up out of from the inside of my body, out of my mouth. A blob of blood landed on the floor next to me, on the cement floor, and I just called it Jesus.
So you hollered out Jesus. I mean,
Lord help me. Yes, I remember saying it twice.
And I know that I've heard you talk about the story of when the EMTs got there.
Well, it fell on me, and like I say, the blood came out, and I just calling out to God help me, and it, I can't even tell you how bad it hurt. The pain was horrendous. And the guy get down out of the truck, and he couldn't put the jack back underneath the axle because the axle's on cement now. So he's trying to figure out how he's going to get up off my body. So he put it on the big curved leaf spring there, and he jacked it up off the leaf spring. And when he got it up in there, then I could see my body again, so my work uniform went to the edge of my ribs, went down, followed along my spine, came up back to my pelvic, and it looked like something out of a cartoon. That's all I could think of as I'm looking at it. And he called 911.
You should be dead at this point.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm thinking when I'm looking at myself. There's no way I should be alive and see my body like this. So he had called 911. It's a volunteer fire department in the middle of nowhere. As you'd expect, where logging, business would be probably. And so the first couple of guys got there. The first, the EMTs, workers, the fire department, emergency EMS guys, and I had a pulse and I was able to talk to him. But when I had 5 arteries. What I didn't know at the time was I had 5 major arteries completely severed when the truck fell on me. But when he jacked it up off me, I'm now bleeding out, and so I'm bleeding to death and didn't know it. And I'm getting weak and I'm panicking. I'm asking him to get me out front of the truck before those guys got there, and he didn't want to touch me. So I reached back, grabbed the bottom bumper, and I dragged myself out this far. So now, if the front bumper's coming down right about where my chest is, this much meat is sticking out from the front bumper, and he wouldn't move me, he wouldn't touch me because I'm flat across the middle.
How did you have the energy at this point to even pull yourself?
I think it was probably just adrenaline or just fear or whatever. And then those guys showed up, those firemen showed up, just not working guys, that are on the volunteer fire department. They showed up, and they were, trying to help me breathe. I was having a hard time breathing, and my breath started getting further and further apart, and I realized I'm dying. This ain't looking good. And at a certain point, I can remember my heart stopped. And when my heart stopped from bleeding out, my spirit left my body, and I went up into the roof of the garage. The real Bruce went up on the roof of the garage, and my body was laying underneath the truck. The Bible says we have got a spirit that lives inside our body, and when that happened, when my heart stopped, my spirit went up on the roof of the garage, and I just watched from above. And by the way, I felt amazing. No pain, no fear, no negative feelings at all, just perfect peace. I mean, perfect peace up in the ceiling looking down.
When you had this out of body experience, and you said you was looking at, what was you seeing?
Well, I was listening to what he was saying. He was saying, the guy I was working with, he was apologizing to me and saying he was sorry because he had jacked up the truck and not used safety equipment and all that.
Now he's talking to the body laying there.
Yeah, he's talking to baby. No, I'm just up above. He's talking to the body laying there. And the EMS guys aren't going to do CPR because I've got this massive chest injury, flat across my belly. So they're not going to do CPR. So they just stood back.
They didn't have nothing to compress.
Yeah, and so on each side of me, what I saw was an angel. The guy I was working with, Leonard, he's like, over 6 foot, a little over 6 foot, and maybe 6'1", 6'2", and on each side of him was an angel, but their heads were a couple feet taller than his head. So they had, based off of him, I'm guessing about 8 feet tall these angels were. And I remember they had white shining robes, and sometimes, in the Bible, sometimes the Bible mentions angels 290 sometimes, and sometimes it says they have wings, and sometimes they don't. These angels didn't have wings, just approximately 8 feet tall men, big, very, very muscular men with long hair. These guys had long hair that went down to the middle of their back, and they had their hands in the middle of my belly where I was crushed flat, one from each side, and they weren't talking, they weren't moving, they weren't communicating with my body or with me up in the ceiling. I could just see their backs, see their big broad shoulders and their big muscular arms, and they had me in the middle where I was flat, just touching me in the middle. So I was just watching it all from above.
And the EMT show up.
Yeah, they just keep coming. Volunteer fire department, they're coming as their pagers are all gone at the same time, but they got to drive from different places. So they just keep coming, and I'm just watching from above, listening to every word everybody's saying. And then this gal shows up, one of the last 2 people to get there, and she came in the back of the shop, one of the last 2, the only 2 people to come in the back. Everybody came to the main entrance. And the only way I could see that was my spirit was up above, where my body was. Later, when I got out of the hospital a year later, I talked to them, asked them why they came in the back door. And it was a simple reason, but that small detail for me and for them proved I was really up there. The real me was up there watching what door people were coming in. So she got down between the angels. She's feeling for a pulse. There isn't any. And she's, can't figure out why nobody's doing anything. But at this point, I've had no heartbeat, no pulse, several minutes. And she said, "What's his name?" I'm listening from above. And she said, "What's his name?" And the guy I was working with said, "Bruce VanNatta." And she goes to slap me in the face saying, "Open your eyes, come back, come back." And she was praying. I found out later, I didn't know her at the time, but she was praying, asking God to bring me back to life. And when she did, my spirit came back into my body. And when it came in, my heart started. Now it's no CPR, no defibrillator, no nothing. My heart started, but the pain was so bad, I said no. And I was like, no, I didn't want it. When I said no, my heart stopped. My spirit left. I went back up on the roof, the ceiling, and out of the roof, a tunnel opened up. People talk about these near-death experiences, or out-of-body experiences. A lot of times I see a tunnel. Sometimes they see a light on the end of it. And off here to my right, there was a tunnel going out of the roof of the garage. And at the end of that tunnel, a million miles away, was a bright light. And I knew it was heaven. And I got in the tunnel, and I was excited about going to heaven. And I got in it, and I started going at a fast pace towards the light. And I could hear her, but I couldn't see her. And she was calling me, and praying for me. And I came back out of the tunnel backwards in reverse. I couldn't see where I was going. I was getting sucked backwards out of it. Came back into the roof of the garage. I could look down and see her, see the angels, back into my body the second time. And when I came in that second time, back in my body, I looked for the angels. I saw them in the spirit looking down, but when my heart started again, and I looked for the angels on each side, I couldn't see them with these eyes, which puzzled me. But then right in that moment, God spoke to me, and I didn't see him, but I heard him plain as day, and he just simply said this, very calmly. He wasn't scared, he wasn't freaking out, he didn't sound nervous. He just calmly said, if you want to live, you're going to have to fight, and it's going to be a hard fight.
Wow.
And I didn't take long to think about it, that I didn't want it. I didn't want the fight, I didn't want the pain. And I said no, and when I did that, my spirit left my body, my heart stopped the third time. And I went back up on the roof of the garage, the tunnel opened up, I started going towards the light again, in the tunnel, going towards heaven, and that gal prayed me back to life that third time.
This is three
times she
out
prayed
of the
me back.
body experiences you've had in just a few minutes.
Yeah, it just,
wow.
And maybe less than a minute, whatever. And she prayed me back that last time. When I came back in that time, I come back in, I go from feeling amazing to going into my crushed body that feels so horrendous. And she's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and she said, Mister, you're on the verge of life and death. What do you got to fight for? You got a wife, you got kids. And I had not thought about Lorie, the kids, at all, because the pain and it was just the trauma and everything was so, crazy. And at that moment, when she reminded me of that, she said, what do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? I thought of her. I thought of our 4 little kids. I thought, oh man, they need me. She said, don't close your eyes. You stay here. So they took me by ambulance to a local hospital where they med-flighted me to the trauma center, and then they started emergency surgery, and it was a crazy next year I spent in the hospital. Basically, I get out, go back in, get out, go back in. 5 major operations. We counted out the days, and in my life, I've spent more than a year in the hospital.
Wow. Miss Lorie.
Yes.
How did you receive the news?
His mom called me on the phone and said that Bruce was in an accident, but she didn't have much detail.
And so I'm sure at this point, just hearing about an accident, you always get nervous.
Yeah.
Emotions has already started. But I wanna, when you first saw him.
So when I first saw him, the deacon from our church at that time had told me, okay, this is what it's going to look like, because I'd never been in an emergency room really. And he goes, he's going to be hooked up to a lot of stuff. He's going to be in a bed. He's, won't be able to talk. They're going to have stuff in his mouth. And I was like, all right. So he prepared me really well so that when we walked in, I knew what to expect. But what I didn't expect is that, like when I touched his hand, just how, not emotion. It was not cold, but it was just really no feeling.
I know there was a lot going through your mind. You got 4 kids. You was home.
Yep.
Taking care of kids, waiting on husband to come.
For supper.
Honey, I'm home.
Yeah.
But that phone call, is that phone call changed you?
It changed the sense of how to react. So I get the phone call and I said, well, what should I do? And she goes, well, because where they med-flighted him was Madison. So it's 2.5 hours away from her house. I go, so what should I do? She goes, find somebody for the kids and find somebody to take us. I said, okay. And I thought of our best friend, family friend, who's a trucker. I go, he can drive us. He'll be even-keeled, safe, drive us. So I hung up the phone and wanting to freak out, but I got 4 little kids in the other room, so I kneeled at the end of the bed.
Well, that, if you just back up just a little bit, that night, the doctor came out after the first surgery and told her that he didn't expect me to live through the hour. He said, we don't expect to live through the hour. So the deacon she mentioned from our church that went down there said, well, okay, if he's not expected to live 3 hours, for every 30 minutes he's alive, we'll pray. And so they gathered every
Thank
30
God.
minutes.
For every 30 minutes.
Wow.
And we did it all night. We stayed up all night long and prayed every 30 minutes.
And I'm sure a prayer chain went out. This
Immediately.
church going to that church and this person to that person.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So they operated on me all week.
And so we got 5 major arteries
Yeah.
that's severed.
Yeah.
And
That's the main thing they did that first night. They just hooked up those arteries, and everything else was so damaged. Intestines and spleen and pancreas and all that was all
They weren't
broken
gonna do
vertebrae.
nothing.
They didn't do none of it. They just hooked up the arteries and said, we don't expect them to live.
it would, if I'm correct, I think they have. You're probably the only person in the world.
Doctors told us I'm the only person they can find in the world.
That's documented through doctors. And
through studies that were done on the number of arteries severed in some trauma or something versus the mortality rate. And there's been a couple different studies done, but the biggest one they found was done at University of Southern California. And they compare my case against that study. And they say there's nobody could find in any trauma centers around the world that had lived after having major arteries severed in 5 places, and there's nobody with even 4. But there were some with 3. So they said they told me, months later, obviously when I was coherent and out of the induced coma and all that, they said, you're lucky because I was complaining, I had a bad attitude. And they said, well, you're lucky because we can't find anybody in the world, can't find any documented cases, anybody in the world that's lived with major artery severed in 5 places.
Wow.
But they said, I wasn't going to walk and I'd be disabled and all this stuff. And we just kept praying and God just kept doing miracle after miracle. And they removed almost all my intestines. So
This is where I want you.
yeah, adults have they told us adults have 18 to 20 some feet length of small intestine, and they removed
8 to 10.
18 to 20 something.
18 to 20. Okay.
18 to 20 something based on however God made your body.
Correct.
And I had about this much left. They saved 2 pieces. They saved 2 pieces of a little over 2 feet, under 3 feet of intestine is all that I had. And one of those pieces died that they tried to save, and so one of the operations was emergency to remove that piece of dead intestine, hook it back up, and so I'm starving to death, dying in the hospital. I lose 65 pounds or something, and they're feeding me intravenously because I couldn't eat, and when they put that intestine back together, I had liquids, and I'm dying in the hospital, and that's when somebody clear across the United States over in New York that was on the prayer chain, and somebody that was at a church, God woke him up, he says, 2 mornings in a row, and told him, buy a ticket, fly to Wisconsin, pray for me. His name is Bruce Carlson. And said,
Bruce to Bruce.
yeah, buy a plane ticket, fly to Wisconsin, and pray for me. I'm going to do a miracle. And the first morning he woke up and he told his wife about it, but he said, that sounds crazy. And the next morning, at the exact same time, God woke him up and said, buy a plane ticket, fly to Wisconsin, pray for him, and I'm going to do a miracle. And he came, flew to our state, came to the hospital and prayed for me. When he did, it felt like electricity. When he prayed, he put his palm on my forehead and prayed, and I literally felt like when you touch an electric fence. I don't know, Rex, if you ever touched an electric fence and got shot.
Yeah.
and you hear, sometimes you hear that snap.
Yes.
You hear that.
Yes.
I did, I swear, I heard an audible snap, like electric snap. And I felt it. It kind of stung, and I felt that power go right to my stomach. I could feel my intestines coming back.
What did it feel like?
It felt like something coming uncoiled, like a reel, and it was just, I could feel them coming back. And so I had this much intestine left, and all of a sudden I got half of my intestines, totally doctor documented. I got half my intestines back instantly.
Wow, man.
And yeah, I started eating, started able to eat, I was losing weight, that happened. I leveled off, I started gaining weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How old was the kids during this time?
So the youngest was in kindergarten, and then the twins were in 2nd grade, and our oldest was in 3rd grade.
Wow. And I'm sure that this had a huge impact on them as well.
Yeah.
Not only did it affect you, it affects
Everybody.
you as the wife, and it affects the children.
And because we were 2 hours away, there was the travel.
So I stayed there for the first 3 weeks and slept on a folding chair with a blanket, and then once they took out the nebula, or is that a nebulizer?
Oh, off the breathing machine. Took me off the breathing machine.
And he could talk a little bit. Then I went back home and would travel every day for 2 hours. 2.5 hours to go visit them, stay for about 2.5 hours, drive home for about 2 hours, and that was the routine for
Put the kids on the bus.
weeks.
Put the kids on the bus, drive 2 hours, spend an hour or two with me, drive back home so when the kids got off the bus, she was there for me.
Ms. Lorie, you must really love him.
I do. That I do.
It's, I know a lot has happened at this point now, and now, first of all, you shouldn't have survived
Right.
the accident.
Right.
No way that you should have. You should have left there in a body bag.
Yeah.
5 severed arteries.
Yeah.
That that's cut completely in two. You
Completely
bleeding
severed.
now.
Yeah, I bled out. That's how I.
And
that's
you have to
when I
be
died.
transferred to ambulance to a hospital, and then life flighted to another hospital.
Yeah, over 2 hours from the point the truck found me till they operated on me
2 hours.
with 5 severed arteries.
Good.
And they said I should have bled out in 3, 4, 5 minutes
I
and been
mean,
dead.
we're
Well, at the
talking-
time I died, when my spirit left my body, that's when they said I should have died.
Yeah.
But that lady prayed me back, and God sent the angels to do whatever they did.
It's just, that's just evident that there is a God,
Yeah,
a living God.
amen.
And then they take out all these intestines.
Yeah.
I mean, you should, even if you, like you did survive, but you should even be on a colostomy bag.
Well, yeah, they said I would. They told me there was only a period of time that they could keep me alive, and I was going to starve to death.
Yeah. And you're not even supposed to walk,
Right? Yeah.
not even supposed to talk, not even supposed to hold your wife's hand.
Yeah.
And here you are today.
Yeah.
So all of these things that's happened, all of these things that's happened to you, a miracle man,
Miracle God.
exactly. You know,
Every day's
Yeah,
a blessing.
you're living proof of what God can do in someone's life.
Amen. Amen.
Since all of this accident, and I know you have ministry now,
Yeah.
Sweetbread Ministries. You started this ministry. No, you both started this ministry.
Right.
And so, what avenue has that opened?
We just wanted to, tell people what God did is all, and I'm the first person to say that I sure didn't and don't deserve His mercy and His grace.
You've traveled. Where all have you traveled?
We've done over 1,000 services around the world. I've been on over 100 radio shows and over 50 TV shows, and written a couple books. First one was a bestseller. Just millions of YouTube video views, millions of views on YouTube and internet, and just we just tell what God has done, and then we pray for people, and like we saw here in your church last night. We saw people getting healed. God's an amazing God.
God's gifted you with the ability to, and a heart. I said a gift. We all have the gift, but
Yeah.
a heart to see people's lives change. To pray for them. To
Just want to see people receive be able to tap into what God did for us. That's all.
Encouraged.
Yeah.
Miss Lorie, after you have not only seen, but you felt it as well. I know who was carrying the pain, but you was carrying the pain. And what can you say that to be encouraging for many other men or women that's having to go through some huge tragic of their spouse?
Well, what worked the best is immediately I went to our bedroom and I got down on my knees and I prayed for God to help us. So I invited God into the situation. I said, give me the strength and the peace to deal with whatever was coming, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know how bad the accident was. I just knew he was going to Madison. That's all I knew. So I invited God into the situation immediately and asked for God, His peace and His strength, and He just picked me up. It was just like, boom. And we went from there.
She took her Bible as all she took to the hospital and spent 3 weeks there.
Wow. Was there at any point that either one of you got angered with God because of this?
I don't think she did. I did.
You did?
Yeah. I was in the hospital and I couldn't figure out why it sent angels to save me, and I was so miserable and sick, and they said I was going to be disabled. And I just couldn't understand why He'd want me to, why send the angels and then let me die miserably in the hospital over a year. It was bad. I was a lot of pain, real messed up. And I was like, why didn't you just let me die then? you know, instead of going through all this.
I think I would have been angered after you said you had this outer body
And
experience.
it felt so good. Yeah.
And then you had to come back to
Right.
the pain.
That is.
You had to come back to the reality.
Absolutely. And you know, when God said, if you want to live, you have to fight, it's going to be a hard fight. For a long time, I thought it was about the year that I spent in the hospital and all the operations and all that, but it's more. I mean, it's more. Part of it is even the hard fight. The hard fight is tasting how good that was.
Wow.
And being here. As much as I love my wife and my kids, it felt really good.
Could you have ever survived this without God?
It's laughable. No.
No.
Not spiritually, not physically, not emotionally, no way. Not financially, no way. No way at all.
God's opened up a lot of doors for you. You have
Yeah.
a story.
Yeah, testimony of what he did.
And I know people that's watching. If you're watching and maybe that you're going through some huge tragic, it doesn't always have to be an accident of this.
Right.
It could be marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Divorce,
list goes
yeah.
on. Divorce.
Depression, sorrow. I mean, there's so many things that people fight and come against. Yeah,
how many
addictions.
different emotions
Addictions, yeah.
it was?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a roller coaster. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But for somebody that's going through tragic right now in their life,
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say to them?
God. You need
Invite God in.
Invite God in the situation quick and trust him, because he does have plans for his children, and he promised to never leave us, never forsake us. You know, everybody wants the story where God takes away the tragedy and takes away the storm, but sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he's there with you in the middle of the storm, and it doesn't always turn out the way we want it to, unfortunately. But he promised it doesn't matter how it turns out, doesn't matter what the circumstances are, he's there for us, with us, in the middle of it.
During this time, the kids, now they've grown up, what impact did it have on them through the time?
Well, 2 of our 4 are going into full-time ministry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Proud father?
Oh yeah, we're
And a
proud of
proud
all
mother.
4 of our children, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's
All 4 of
great.
them, yeah.
That's great. That is great.
Gave them character.
Yeah.
Gave them compassion.
It drew the family
I mean,
close
yeah,
together.
yeah, it was hard. I think anytime a family goes through that kind of, I was gone for a year, and we lost, financially, things really changed because I had a successful business. I didn't have workman's comp. I didn't have anything. We lost lots of stuff. We kept our house, but things changed, and so there was a lot of, Mom was gone a lot during that time at the hospital, and it was emotional trauma for the kids to go through.
Bruce, I want you to look to the audience, and I want you to tell them how important it is to have God, in your life.
Well, I mean, that's it. I can say from being going through a lot of messed up stuff as a child, and making my own bad choices and decisions, and dealing with addictions for 20 years, and we have choices to make. The Bible says choose blessings or choose curses. I've chosen a lot of curses in my life, but I know, and there's always consequences for bad choices, but when we choose the blessings and we choose God's way and we choose Him into our life, that's the thing that makes the biggest difference. That's the only thing that can really help us for long term. And I know that when my spirit left my body and I saw that light, and I know what was on the end of that tunnel, it was heaven, and I can't wait for that to happen someday. And I think everybody, we've all been given that choice, and I think everybody just at least needs to contemplate and think about, where am I going when I die? And even before we die, when we choose Jesus to be our Lord and Savior right here and right now, that's life-changing. To have Him here in this life is life-changing. And I encourage everybody to do that. God's not going to force anybody. He's not going to twist our arm. He loves us enough to give us free will. and He invites us into that relationship, but He's not going to force it. So I just encourage everybody listening, invite God into your heart to be your Lord, to be your Savior, to be in intimacy, to be in relationship with Him right now, so that you can have a rewarding life, a life that's the only place you can have peace. People can be rich, we can be a millionaire and still not have peace. You can have everything the world has to offer and still not have peace. The only place that peace comes from is God. And it's a daily choice to have that peace. It's a daily choice to allow Him in. Christian or not, it's a daily choice to allow Him in to minister to you every day and to be who He's called you to be. And so I would encourage everybody to do that, because there's nothing like it.
Wow. Bruce, thank you, brother.
Thanks, Rex.
Thank you, Miss Lorie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Aren't you so glad that you heard this story? Here at rjm.life, this is what our ministry is about, is to capture those fascinating stories. So many people go through troubles and trials and tribulations, and you just need that extra little help and that extra little push to know that it's all right, that you can make a way, that God has made a way for you. Listen, there's other people who has great stories as well, and we would love to capture them in these documentaries. Send us an email. If you know somebody, reach us at rjm.life@gmail.com. Tell us who they are, so give us the information that we need to get in touch with them. We would love to capture their story as well, to get all of what God is doing in people's lives out there for others. Many people are struggling and they just need a little bit of encouragement, just like you just heard. Also, you can get involved by making donations to Rex Johnson Ministries, rjm.life. We're a 501c3 organization, so your donations is deductible. So your donations would help us get out here and travel around the world to capture these unique stories. That's what we're after, the unique stories where God has done just life-changing things and miracles in people's life. We hope that you'll get involved. Thank you for being a part in partnership with rjm.life.